Hello friends, it's the Funky Play Brothers, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube. And today I'm reading an original novel, Piggy Cured by Terrace Crawford, and on the side it says #2. So I think it's a go watch me read Piggy the Infected, which I think is the first book. And then this is the second book. Now let us read Chapter 1, Part 1. Now let's just... Okay, so go. Chapter 1. On any normal day of the island city-state of Lucella, the sun would peek out from behind a cover of clouds, showering the island with golden rays. Dew-soaked blades of grass would sway lightly in a gentle breeze, and the wind was so delicate that you couldn't tell where the air stopped and your skin began. On a normal day in Lucella, birds chirped merrily from the peaks of lush green treetops, and the smell of sea breeze wafted across the shore of the island. On a normal day, the laughter of Lucella's people echoed across the city, from the children outside a local schoolyard to the underground metro station. On a normal day, there would be dozens of people milling around the city, going about their daily lives just like anywhere else. Unfortunately, Lucella had not had a normal day in a very long time. It has been months since the infection has begun. The infection that had caused perfectly normal people to be acting strangely for reasons that were still unclear. Several members of the population have been affected by something strange. Upstanding members of the community were suddenly growing bigger and more distorted, losing control of their bodies, becoming more aggressive and sporting dull, glowing eyes. Their terrible eyes that haunt Ben in his sleep. Even now, this is when he managed to get any sleep. Ben drew his jacket closer around his shoulder as a shuddered, trying to keep the thoughts of the things he had seen over the past few weeks at bay. Ben's friend Ollie shuddered as well, more worried about the future than the past. Ben's whole journey has begun with Ollie's a week-long trek throughout the land to find him. Had led them both here to this very spot outside a military base on the outskirts of town. The friends they had made along the way stood on the crest of the hill, watching over them, keeping alert for any signs of the encroaching infected. Billy was an orange bull, much taller and larger than just about anyone that Ben has ever met. His dark gray horn, silver nose ring, and black spiked bracelet made him seem intimidating. But he was actually one of the sweetest people that Ben had ever met. Of course, it didn't hurt that he was as strong as an ox, even though he was a bull. Since they had met, Billy had carried around a large barbell, whether it was an effort to keep fit or simply a deterrent to the weaker infected. Ben didn't know, and truthfully, he didn't care. Those weights and steel bar had already gotten them out of more than a few jams. Badgie, on the other hand, was less personable, a white badger with a red tie. Badgie had spent most of their time together wisecracking, but Ben couldn't deny his usefulness in a fight. The glowing rod he held up close to him at all times had been proven to be just as effective a zombie. During deterrent as anything else they had come across, and Badgie wielded it with astonishing precision. Ben, Ollie prodded, gently rousing Ben from his thoughts. Are we doing this or not? Ben looked at the door of the base and nodded resolutely. Of course, they were doing this. They had come too far not to. Over the past few weeks during this adventure across Lucella, they had been in frequent contact via a police officer walkie-talkie with a man who seemed to know more about this infection than he was letting on. And if the helicopter parked outside the base was any indication, this was where the man had ended up. Ben took a deep breath to center himself, something he found himself doing more and more these days. They pulled the base door. The door didn't budge. Ben tried again to no avail, pushing, pulling, and series of rhythmic knocks. Nothing seemed to work. Wait a minute, Ollie trailed off, moved to the side of the door. There's a keypad here. Ben moved to follow Ollie, grateful for a reason to take even a small break from trying to pry the door open. Ollie was right. On the side panel of the door, there was an old keypad, 10 digits laid out on top of corresponding buttons, and 4 digital blank blinking, almost mocking at the duo. A 4-digit passcode. We could be here all day trying to out all of those. Ben laminated, kicking a patch of dirt with frustration. Sure, that's one way to do it. Ollie started. Ben had known his friend long enough to recognize when he had a plan. Or we could just use these 4 numbers. Ollie pointed at the keypad. And sure enough, 4 of the numbers had been worn down. 1749, said Ollie. Those 4 numbers have been used more than the rest. He put those in the proper order. We've got ourselves the code to the base, Ben finished. His friends thought it was smart, something that would have taken Ben himself a lot longer to figure out. Ben punched the numbers into the keypad in order, used only to be greeted by a red flashing light and a series of angry beeps. Okay, so not in the numerical order. Ben thought to himself, well, keep going, right? There are like 5,000 possible combinations of these numbers. Only by the flickering lights coming from a series of fluorescent lights overhead, humming and popping ominously. Ollie flipped a lever near the bottom of the stairs, flooding the entire base with artificial light. Hello, Ollie shouted through the cupped hands. The sound of his voice echoed across the base. Ben put his hand out to silence him. If any of the infected were loose in the base, then Ollie's cry would surely bring them right to the 2 boys. If the man on the other end of the walkie-talkie was here, this was a rescue mission too. Whoever that man was, he knew more about the infection, and he held on. And Ben had come too far now to get to the bottom of all this. Too far now to not get to the bottom of all this. Check around downstairs. Ben pointed toward the hallway, gray and lined with red chairs and shelves. Meet me back here in 5 minutes. If you don't find anything, and be careful, Ben, chiding gently. Ollie nodded, disappearing into the elevator and descending to the lower level. Ben turned on his heel, following the overhead lights through the ground floor. The first room he came upon seemed to be sort of an office room. 9 cubicles, all separated with glass walls. Ben searched through the offices for anything they could use, but came up mostly empty-handed. A few half-full staplers, a couple of long disconnected phones covered in cobwebs. If the mysterious voice on the other end of a walkie-talkie had come from here, it was not recently. No one had been here in a very long time. Ben moved to the next room. This one much smaller, empty, except for a few scattered papers and abandoned test tubes. He pulled a heavy-duty flashlight out of Officer Doggy's bag. Just one of several things he has saved from the veteran of Lucella Police Department's stash when he had disappeared from the woods that night all those weeks ago. Shining the beam from a flashlight across the papers of the table, Ben began to read, piecing together what he could from the complicated formulas and notes scrawled eventually across the place. He flipped through them, his eyes widening as he pieced everything together. Taking a deep breath, he suddenly became aware of how quiet it was. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end as he came aware of a stand of footsteps behind him. Clutching Officer Doggy's flashlight in his grip, he whirled around to face the source of the echoing footsteps. "Wow!" he screamed when confronting with Ben, who was posing to strike. "Ollie, what are you doing? You can't sneak up on people like that. We are on high alert." Ollie took a moment to catch his breath. "You just told me to be quiet." Ben clicked off Sir Doggy's flashlight off and stowed it back in his backpack. "What did you find downstairs?" "Not much, just some auxiliary power and a whole bunch of cobwebs." "What do you think they were cooking up in this place?" Ben motioned Ollie towards the notes he found on the front page of each, with a mishmash of different handwriting, overlapping notes and formulas. On the back was a strange series of lines and circles. Ben didn't understand, but he figured that they were important. "Ollie, I think we were wrong. I don't think this is a military base. I think it's a lab designed to manufacture a cure." Ollie's eyes widened. "A cure for the infection? You really think so?" "It will explain these notes. They mentioned something called Substance 124. It sounds like whatever this is the reason for the original infection. There are some parts that I don't completely understand. Something about limocelia and lesomia." "Ben, I hate to interrupt." Ollie spoke up, but Ben has sensed it too. They weren't alone, and this time Ben was sure that the inner leper was not his friend. The footsteps of the people infected by the virus were almost unmistakable, though. They seemed to glide when they walked. Their footsteps were heavy, and plodding, glowing red eyes appeared in the doorway on a creature taller than Ben and Ollie by a great deal, and they were getting closer by the moment. The hulkish frame of the infected disappeared and reappeared beneath the lab's faulty lighting. "Don't move a missile," Ben whispered to Ollie. Though gritted teeth, the lumbering figure advanced another step. Then another. Ollie took off, disappearing through the adjoining door. Predictably, the monster took off after him, leaving Ben alone to rifle through Officer Doggy's old bag. They flashed lights and granola bars. Then he finally got his hand. Officer Doggy's old taser. It was only powerful enough to stun one of the infected for a couple of seconds, but sometimes that was all you needed. Ben shoved all the research notes into Officer Doggy's bag and slung it his shoulder before chasing Ollie and the infected out the door. It didn't take long to spot his friend weaving through the maze-like corridors of the offices. The infected not far behind. Ben moved through the offices as well, taking care not to get close to his target. If there was a cure out there, Ben wanted to make sure that he wasn't a zombie himself when he found it. Ollie continued to run, making a break for the laboratory doors. The creature advanced on Ollie and Ben, zigzagged through the office, finally exciting on the other side. Catching up with Ollie and the pursuer, Ben stood in front of the door to the lab. He raised his taser to his eye level and aimed in the at the bear creature, steadying his shaking hand. If Ben hadn't been so focused on rescuing Ollie, he may have noticed the sounds of other side of the door. The subtle thudding of a door had been growing less subtle by the second, and finally the door to the secret laboratory groaned loudly as it caved inward. Billy and Badgie bursting through just in the nick of time. The force of the sudden intrusion knocked Ben over, and Billy barely through the now open door. That is the end of Piggy Chapter 1, Part 1. Piggy the Cure. Okay, so this does follow up with the previous Piggy the Infected book, which is nice because I've been wanting to know what happens because they left it on a cliffhanger. And that is a very cool thing because Badgie should be infected. Billy, I don't know. And these other two characters, nice. But they never said what happened to Officer Doggy. So, friends, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow us on Twitter at the Funky Playbros. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Funky Playbrothers. Support our vlog at Cash App at the $ Funky Playbrothers. So yeah, more unboxings, more taste tests, more adventures, more monies, and for support. Thank you for watching. Bye.